The cameras rolled as the theme music of The View faded into applause. Prince Harry walked onto the stage with a calm smile, waving politely as the co-hosts welcomed him. The studio lights were bright, the audience cheerful, and the mood seemed warm at least on the surface. Harry sat down between Joy Behar and Sunny Hostin. He adjusted his jacket and offered a modest thank you, as Joy praised his recent work on mental health awareness. Sunny complimented his new book. It all felt like a carefully planned appearance. But something was off. It's behind the smiles, behind the light-hearted jokes. There was tension, a hidden current running under the table. Backstage, his PR manager bit her nails. This interview wasn't just another publicity tour. For weeks, there had been talk behind closed doors. British intelligence had flagged his book. American officials had whispered concerns that Harry might reveal details that could damage more than just royal tradition. Some believed he carried truths about transatlantic surveillance and private diplomacy gone wrong. Whether or not that was true, no one knew. But the concern had reached high levels. Earlier that morning, a classified email had circulated within a U.S. security agency. The subject line read, P. Harry, The View. Possible. Disclosure. No one expected a scandal, but no one was ruling it out either. Meanwhile, inside the studio, the air had begun to shift. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the far end of the table, unusually quiet. Her eyes studied Harry with calm intensity. She was not smiling. In her hand was a small card with handwritten notes she hadn't shared with the producers. They had given her a script, the usual soft questions. How's California? What's next after the book? But Whoopi had other plans. In a quiet corner backstage, the director noticed her unease and leaned toward a producer. Why isn't Whoopi sticking to the outline? She said she had a few personal questions, the producer whispered. She wouldn't show them. To us, the director's jaw tightened. Back on stage, Harry answered a question about family life in California. He kept it diplomatic, but something in his eyes betrayed exhaustion. For all his polished media training, his voice held a tired edge, like a man used to smiling through storms. And then, just before the third segment, Whoopi leaned in. The camera caught the movement. She looked at Harry, her voice calm but cutting. Before we move forward, she said, do you ever stop and ask yourself if maybe ... just maybe? Some of this chaos follows you because of your own choices. There was a pause. Even the studio audience, trained to clap, went silent. A faint, nervous laugh came from Joy, who tried to change the subject, but Whoopi didn't let go. Her eyes stayed fixed on Harry. Not everything can be someone else's fault, she added. A slow shift passed through Harry's face. He tilted. His head, his smile faded. Behind his calm expression, something clicked. Maybe it was frustration. Maybe fear. Or maybe the memory of a warning he'd heard before coming on air. Not everyone here is on your side. Backstage, a red light began blinking on the producer's console. A quiet voice came through the headset. Get ready for control room override. This goes sideways. Cut to commercial. In the crowd, someone began recording on their phone. The moment was building. And no, not the producers, not Harry's team, not even Whoopi could predict what would happen next. But they all knew one thing. This wasn't going to be a normal interview. The silence that followed Whoopi's question lingered like smoke in the air. Harry stared at her, his expression calm on the outside, but something hardened behind his eyes. He folded his hands, not breaking eye contact, and asked slowly, can you clarify what you mean by that? Was a classic media-trained move stall, redirect. But Whoopi didn't flinch. You've left the monarchy, written a tell-all. Book, been on Oprah, Netflix, and now here, she said. You tell a story of trauma, of betrayal, and of surviving an ancient system. But does it ever cross your mind that some of the chaos you talk about, you also created? The question was direct, too personal, and completely off script. Backstage, his PR manager exhaled sharply. This was the moment they had feared in scripted, raw, and on live television. Harry blinked slowly, then responded. What I've spoken about, what I've written about tar things people are usually too afraid to say. Because when you speak out against power, you're called a traitor. Or worse, you're ignored. Joy Behar tried to step in. Let's remember. She laughed nervously. This is daytime TV, folks. But no one laughed. Harry turned to Ward. Whoopi, this time more firmly. It's easy to sit here and ask about responsibility. But do you know what it's like when the people closest to you protect lies about you to shield someone else? I didn't leave the monarchy to create chaos. I left to survive it. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. So you're saying you're not? Part of the problem, just the victim of it. That landed hard. Harry's jaw clenched. I never asked to be born into this. But I won't apologize for telling the truth just because it's uncomfortable. Now the tension was visible. The room felt smaller. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. Someone in the front row muttered, "Wow," under their breath. In the control room, the show director had his hand hovering over the cut signal. The network had warned him if anything went too far, pull the plug. But too far wasn't clear anymore. This wasn't shouting. This wasn't slander. It's truth colliding with power. It's truth colliding with power. Meanwhile, inside the Department of State, a junior analyst sat in front of a muted TV feed. He had been tasked with monitoring the interview after certain documents were leaked a week prior. The prince had received classified intelligence briefings during his military service. Nothing top secret, but sensitive enough. The fear was always the same. Would Harry, under pressure, let something slip? His hands hovered over the keyboard. One phrase from Harry stood out, protecting lies to shield someone else. The analyst marked it with a red flag. On set, the temperature continued to rise. Let me ask you this, Whoopi said. If you say your goal is healing, why bring your pain to every talk show and streaming service? What's the difference between therapy and performance? Harry didn't answer right away. He looked down, then slowly removed his microphone. Everyone froze. Maybe I made a mistake coming here, he said. I thought this would be a conversation, not an ambush. Sonny Hostin leaned forward. Harry, but he stood up, calm, slow, deliberate. His voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. This isn't about clicks or ratings, he said. It's about survival. You want to talk about choices? Let's talk about centuries. Of silence, of families broken to preserve an image, of the price of loyalty to institutions that don't protect you. He placed the mic on the table. I won't be part of a spectacle. And with that, Prince Harry turned and walked off the set. Security didn't stop him. No one tried to pull him back. The audience remained stunned, watching him disappear. Behind the curtain, as cameras scrambled to follow. The screen cut to a commercial break, abrupt and silent. But the damage was already done. On social media, the moment hit like lightning. The clip began circulating before the show even returned to air. Hashtag Harry storms off. Hashtag Whoopi V's. Harry hashtag Royal Showdown live commentators were already preparing their takes. Supporters hailed him for his courage. Critics called it calculated drama. And inside the studio, no one knew what to say. All they knew was this: something had just broken. And there was no putting it back together. When the show returned from the commercial break, the set of The View looked like a battlefield after a storm. The chairs were still warm, the coffee cups untouched. Whoopi sat upright, hands folded, staring straight into the camera. Sometimes, she said quietly, when people don't hear what they want, they walk away. There was no panel chatter, no laughter, no segue into the next segment. Just silence. Then, slowly, the show continued, but the energy had drained out of the room. The producers knew the moment was already beyond their control. The clip of Prince Harry walking off had already hit social media. News outlets were racing to be first. with headlines. Prince Harry explodes on live TV. Whoopi questions Harry's victim narrative royal drama returns to American screens at a media agency in London. A team of royal analysts gathered urgently. Across multiple monitors, the clip replayed from every angle. But the real concern wasn't the argument. It was Harry's final words before he walked off. Let's talk about centuries of silence, of families broken to preserve an image. That sentence hit nerves. In the world of geopolitics and royal diplomacy, centuries of silence wasn't just poetic, it could hint at something deeper, perhaps even dangerous. Already, conspiracy blogs and international columnists were connecting dots between colonial history, press manipulation, and power alliances within the British establishment. Inside a secure room at GCHQ, the UK's Intelligence and Communications Agency, the event triggered what was known as a protocol echo, a classification tag used for public incidents that might have private implications. One analyst flagged the phrase as potentially signaling a planned reveal or a code something. Buried in public appearance but aimed at those in the know. Meanwhile, Harry's PR team scrambled. In a black SUV speeding through Manhattan, Harry sat silent. His publicist, Ava Clarkson, was beside him, phone in hand, firing off messages. "You cannot go quiet now," she said urgently. "This will explode harder than Oprah. You need to clarify what happened. If you don't, they'll write the story without you." Harry didn't respond. He stared out the window, his face pale but composed. "They already are," he said finally. "What did you mean, centuries of silence?" she asked. Harry turned to her. "Exactly what I said." Ava's phone buzzed again. Calls from CNN, MSNBC, the BBC, and Sky News. Everyone wanted a comment. But more than that, Whitehall wanted answers, unofficially, of course. Backchannels were already open. Then a call came in, not from a journalist, but from someone Harry hadn't heard from in years. "Put it on speaker," he said. Ava hesitated, then tapped the screen. A British voice came through, cold, direct. "You said too much, Harry. You need to fix it." Harry didn't flinch. The truth's too dangerous. Maybe it needs to be heard louder. There was a pause. "Be careful what you expose." Some things stayed buried for a reason. The line cut. Ava looked at him, stunned. "Who was that?" Harry didn't answer. Instead, he leaned back and said, "Let's go to the hotel." No statements. Not yet. Across the Atlantic, Buckingham Palace issued a two-line comment. "The Duke of Sussex speaks in his own capacity. We offer no further comment." But that silence only fueled speculation. Royal biographers, political commentators, and intelligence insiders began dissecting the confrontation for hidden meanings. What had Harry been holding back? What did weaponized silence mean in the context of government ties? What did he know? Meanwhile, in Washington, a congressional aide texted a senior senator. "Did you see what Harry said? The Brits will try to clean this up. But if he's hinting at what I think he is, we've got a problem." At the State Department, internal discussion turned serious. If Harry's upcoming speaking engagements hinted at state secrets or classified histories, especially those involving US-UK cooperation, there could be diplomatic fallout. Back in New York, a private message arrived in Harry's secure inbox. It was unsigned, but the signature block showed a familiar threlator agency. "We believe you may be in possession of material that, if released, could disrupt international protocols. We urge you to meet with us to assess the risk." Harry stared at the message for a long time. He didn't reply. That night, every major news network led with the footage. Images of Harry's tense face, Whoopi's unmoving posture, the mic being laid on the table, the walk-off. No one could agree on who was right. But everyone agreed. The prince had shaken something loose, and the world was waiting to see what would fall next. The night after the walk-off, New York didn't sleep. Outside Harry's hotel, reporters camped out in the summer heat. cameras aimed at every tinted window and back exit. Inside, a suite on the 22nd floor had become the nerve center of a silent storm. No interviews, no posts. Just a prince staring at a world on fire and knowing he had lit the match. Harry stood by the window, watching the city breathe below. Ava paced behind him, whispering into her phone. Security team, newly reinforced, checked every hallway and stairwell every 30 minutes. They had reason to. A break-in attempt had already been reported at a private archive Harry used for his memoir. The intruder fled before being identified. Ava ended her call and spoke. White House just sent a soft inquiry through a journalist asking, if you're about to make a disclosure with foreign policy implications? That's the phrasing they used. Harry turned. Let them ask directly. They won't yet. The door buzzed. One of the guards opened it to reveal a woman in a beige trench coat, short, precise, mid-40s. She didn't introduce herself, just nodded. I'm the person people send when they're worried what comes next, she said. Harry didn't flinch. MI6 or CIA? She smiled. Yes. Ava blinked. Excuse me? The woman ignored her and turned to Harry. You stirred something ancient. And some people want to know, how much do you actually have? Harry narrowed his eyes. Enough. The agent sat. Let me guess. Old communications, internal directives. Maybe colonial era suppression campaigns, intelligence interference, even relationships between your family and certain regimes. Ava stepped forward. You're admitting that all exists? The agent looked amused, not admitting anything. I'm explaining what we're afraid you might say. Harry leaned forward, and if I do, you'll be labeled a traitor to 2 countries, maybe a third, but you won't be silenced the way they tried before. That was the old playbook. Harry stood silent. He remembered the nights Meghan cried herself to sleep. The calls that never came from the palace. The tabloid stories planted with permission. He also remembered the folders, the ones from his mother's safe house in Switzerland, the names. Scribbled in Diana's handwriting, the connections drawn between royal figures and political actions long erased from public record. The woman stood. You think the truth will heal the world? But it can also tear down what still stands. Be sure. Then she left. Later that night, a new video surfaced. Not from Harry's team, not from any news outlet. Just a grainy 48-second clip. An old file from a royal banquet in 1997. A whispered conversation between 2 high-ranking men, one British. One American mentioning the word containment and Princess Diana's name. It exploded online within minutes. Suddenly, the walk-off at the View wasn't about a TV argument. It became a story of suppression, power, and a global cover-up. Hashtag Diana Files trended. Conspiracy podcasts canceled other topics. Columnists who had once dismissed Harry as dramatic now called him the canary in the coal mine. The British press doubled down. The Telegraph called the footage deepfake propaganda. The Daily Mail ran a front page with just one word, traitor. But others saw the cracks showing. Former MI5 officials were asked to appear on talk shows. Some declined. Others hinted that much of what Harry had said wasn't far from long held. Whispers. Meanwhile, inside the hotel room, Harry sat with Ava and his laptop. He typed a single line into a draft post scheduled for release at midnight. If truth costs me everything, then it's a price I'm ready to pay. Ava looked at him. Are you sure? Harry nodded. The world deserves to know what's been hidden behind crowns and headlines. I won't be another silent Windsor. At 11:58 p.m., Ava hovered over the send button. Then Harry's phone rang. Unknown number. UK country code, he answered. The voice was old, familiar. Royal, you will not survive this. Nor will the family click. Midnight hit. Harry hit post. The war had begun. The moment the post went live, the ripple was instant and electric. Global newsrooms lit up like crisis command centers. CNN dropped scheduled programming to run a breaking banner. Prince Harry suggests existence of hidden royal files. The BBC issued a cautious statement calling for careful consideration of any unverified material. Sky News aired a 3-minute editorial demanding Harry return home or stay silent forever. But the internet was louder than all of them. In less than 20 minutes, Harry's post had 9.3 million views. Hashtag Royal Leak, hashtag Windsor War, and hashtag Diana Truth were trending in over 60 countries. TikTok creators dissected every word. Independent journalists began cross-referencing the leaked video with past official events. Reddit threads exploded with theories. But something else happened, something no one expected. Whistleblowers started messaging Harry's team. Former palace aides, retired diplomats, one ex-CIA analyst from the 90s. They didn't all have evidence, but they all had pieces, stories, names, records of redacted communications. One message came anonymously through a secure server used by investigative journalists. It's just a sentence. And an attached file. You're not wrong, or you're not safe. The file was a scanned memo, dated 2001. It described a joint meeting between British intelligence and a U.S. security agency marked classified eyes only. The subject line, Operation Sandglass, Media Pressure Containment post-Diana. Printed it and handed it to Harry. He stared at the heading. They were working together, he said quietly. Ava nodded. And they've been waiting for this moment ever since you left the palace. That same night, Ava's phone rang. It was a major American broadcaster offering Harry a primetime slot for a global interview. Not a panel, not a talk show. Just Harry, a neutral host, and 1 hour of airtime simulcast across North America, Europe, and Australia. Will protect. Editorial control, the producer promised. Your words. Your terms. Harry didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. The offer went public anyway. Within hours, diplomats from the UK began contacting the U.S. State Department. Tensions. Rose, a British MP, hinted that if American networks allowed unverified defamatory content to air, it could damage relations. A leaked memo from Washington showed U.S. intelligence agencies already debating how far. Harry might go on to whether national security could be compromised if old Cold War-era operations were dragged back into the light. Inside Buckingham Palace, panic moved behind polished doors. A crisis committee met in the early morning. PR teams drafted statements, but none were approved. Royal family members were ordered not to comment. Even William, who had always played the diplomat, canceled a public appearance with no explanation. And then it got worse. The restaurant where Diana had her final meal before the crash, its security footage archive long believed destroyed was recovered by an anonymous whistleblower and sent directly to a journalist in Geneva. The tape included a conversation between Diana and a man with a partially obscured face about press harassment, surveillance, something about the files I gave to the boy. One line stood out. If anything happens to me, they'll try to silence him too. The boy was Harry. The world watched with its breath held. Suddenly, this wasn't just Harry's rebellion. This was legacy, revenge, and unfinished stories buried beneath flags and headlines. Harry's team began preparing for the broadcast. Ava worked around the clock, fact-checking files, cross-referencing witnesses, encrypting documents, and building a timeline no one had ever dared to assemble. They called it the Windsor-Paterna 2-decade sequence of events. Leaks and character assassinations that always followed the same playbook. But with every move they made, resistance grew stronger. 2 tech platforms quietly flagged Harry's account for unusual activity. 3 news outlets received legal notices within hours of publishing early excerpts from whistleblower material. And a former royal bodyguard gave a chilling interview in which he said, "There are things even Harry doesn't know, and people who will do anything to keep it that way." Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg, silenced since the broadcast fallout, posted a cryptic tweet. Some truths cost more than power. I hope he's ready. The tweet went viral. Some took it as support. Others saw it as a warning. Inside Harry's suite, a new reality was settling in. He wasn't a prince anymore. He was something else, a symbol, threat, a living archive. Ava handed him a USB drive containing all verified files, witnesses, and footage. Something happens, this goes to 5 journalists across 5 countries. Simultaneously, Harry looked up. This isn't just my story. No, she replied. But you're the one who decided not to shut up. A long silence. Then Harry said, we go on air. The world held its breath again. The lights in the studio were dim, but the tension was blazing. Every camera was calibrated. Every feed tested. The international primetime interview was about to begin broadcast live to over 100 million viewers. Networks across the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and parts of Europe were tuned in. Social media platforms had countdowns ticking. This wasn't just a broadcast, it was a global event. Ava paced backstage, eyes locked on her tablet, monitoring feeds and signal stability. Harry sat alone in the makeup chair, staring into the mirror. There was no royal insignia, no formal attire, just a black shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled, stripped. Down, raw, honest. The interviewer, respected global journalist Lina Morano, entered the room. Calm professional, known for grilling war criminals and corrupt presidents. She gave Harry a nod, and he returned it with a steady breath. You ready to go on record? She asked. I've been off record too long, Harry replied. Red light blinked on. Cameras rolled. Lina opened the segment with global context. Tonight's broadcast may alter history as we know it. The man across from me isn't just a former royal, he is, as of this moment, a key witness in a global cover-up stretching back decades. What you hear may disturb you. It may divide you, but it's real. She turned to Harry. Let's begin. Harry didn't read from notes. He didn't dodge. He started with his mother. She wasn't paranoid, he said, voice low but clear. She was hunted systematically. Described what Diana had told him in private about surveillance, intimidation, and being warned to stop speaking to certain journalists. How she believed powerful figures, both British and international, wanted her silenced not because she was a problem, but because she knew too much. Then came the bombshell. Harry reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded, sealed letter. My mother left this with her lawyer. Was meant to be opened if she died under suspicious circumstances. The document, verified by legal experts and DNA tested, contained Diana's own handwriting. She described being followed by unmarked vehicles pressured to abandon her humanitarian work, and her fear that her sons might be used as leverage if she didn't cooperate. I didn't want to believe it, Harry said. But then I lived it. He spoke of years inside the palace, watching how narratives were shaped by press offices. He revealed that select members of the family were used as lightning rods, fed to tabloids to protect others. He admitted he had once been complicit. Used as distraction when stories about Prince Andrew or diplomatic failures were about to break. I was the sacrifice, he said, again and again. Then came Operation Sandglass. Lina held up the document from the anonymous source. Can you confirm this memo is real? Harry nodded. It matches a copy my mother once hid in our estate. It was about controlling media narratives around Diana after her separation and beyond. He explained how intelligence networks in both the UK and US had quietly collaborated on image containment. The goal? Suppress scandals that could destabilize public faith in institutions like the monarchy or British intelligence. Then Lina asked the most dangerous question of the night. Who, Harry? Who ordered it? A long silence. Then Harry said a name, just one. A now retired intelligence chief who had risen through the ranks during the 90s. The man was already under quiet. Investigation for unrelated financial fraud. Harry's words turned him into a public target. Suddenly, producers backstage were panicking. Phones were ringing off the hook. One feed dropped. Another went fuzzy. Ava looked up from her console, realizing what was happening. "They're trying to kill the broadcast," she muttered. Lena remained composed. "Harry, do you fear for your life now?" "I've feared it for years," he replied. "But silence is more dangerous than truth. They wanted me to disappear in PR. I chose to reappear in reality." That line went viral within 45 seconds. By the time the interview ended, Harry had outlined a full timeline: Diana's final months, the post-crash suppression, his own exit from royal life, and how the same players were still trying to erase uncomfortable history. The broadcast cut to black. For 1 second, the world was silent. Then, everything exploded. Twitter went down briefly from the traffic surge. News sites crashed. Thousands of people staged spontaneous rallies outside British embassies demanding a full investigation. Journalists around the world formed an international media coalition called the Mirror Group, pledging to publish protected, collaborative investigations based on the files. Asterisk, the morning after the interview, the world wasn't just watching, it was shaking. From New York to Nairobi, from Sydney to South London, people woke to headlines that looked more like movie scripts than news reports. Prince Harry named spy. Chief and Diana conspiracy. Royal family rocked by global scandal. Operation Sandglass exposed. The phrase "too big to silence" was trending in 143 countries. But inside Buckingham Palace, there was no trending, only trembling. An emergency council of senior royals, security advisors, and government liaisons had gathered in a soundproof chamber. Phones were confiscated, no recordings, no aides, just whispers, grim expressions, and the sense that the modern monarchy had just stepped onto a ledge with no railing. Across the city, Parliament was in chaos. Opposition leaders demanded an independent public inquiry. The Prime Minister, still reeling from the leaks, was forced into a televised address. Carefully worded, full of neutrality, but everyone knew what wasn't being said. "This government takes all allegations seriously," he said. "We are reviewing newly surfaced material and will act with transparency." But outside, the people weren't waiting. Thousands surrounded the palace gates. Signs read, "Justice for Diana. We want truth, not titles, and no more silence." Young protesters clashed with loyalist counter-protesters. Social media influencers, war journalists, and historians all waded in. There was no longer a single narrative. There were many. And all were erupting at once. Meanwhile, in Washington, Harry and Ava sat in a darkened briefing room with members of the Senate Intelligence Committee. The U.S. was now officially involved. Lena's broadcast had been downloaded over 290 million times in under 24 hours. Congressional aides whispered that this might trigger a special transatlantic commission, something not seen since the Cold War. "I'm not trying to destroy the monarchy," Harry told the committee. "I'm trying to stop it from destroying itself." But not everyone believed that. At a secure location outside London, former intelligence officer, the same one Harry named on air, was being moved under classified protection. MI5 was divided. Some called him a scapegoat. Others said he was the architect of more than anyone knew. What no one denied: Prince Harry had detonated a truth bomb that couldn't be disarmed. In New York, Ava's phone buzzed. Encrypted message. Anonymous. Sender: "You missed something in the file. There's more. Meet me." Attached: a blurred photograph. It showed Diana in a crowd. A man standing behind her. Unidentified. Date stamped 3 weeks before her death. Ava looked at Harry. "You need to see this." Within hours, they were back in motion, meeting with digital forensics experts, tracing old CCTV footage, cross-referencing with foreign archives. What they discovered shifted the entire investigation again. That man in the photo, a retired diplomat, formerly stationed in France, ties to an offshore holding company used by covert operatives in the late 90s. He had vanished after Diana's death, changed names, no trace since. The theory: Diana had been preparing to go public not just with humanitarian revelations, but with documents about arms deals, Middle East connections, and royal involvements far deeper than charity work. She had been on the verge of blowing open not just a family secret, but a geopolitical storm, and someone had known. Lena, watching from her studio in D.C., made a decision. She called her producers. We're not done. The next phase would be bigger, riskier. A global coalition of journalists, protected sources, anonymous drop sites, full public archives. No more secrets hidden behind protocol or ceremony. Meanwhile, the royal family released a brief statement. We recognize the gravity of the moment. The institution is reflecting and listening. But Harry knew what that meant. They were stalling. Back in their hotel, Ava stood by the window, watching helicopters swirl overhead. What now? She asked. Harry took a deep breath. They'll try to clean it all up, silence people, seal files, rebuild the crown with smoke and mirrors. And us. He looked at her, eyes steady. For the first time in days, there was no fear, just clarity. We publish everything. The final scene wasn't broadcast. It was whispered into encrypted networks, twice stabloaded to servers in Iceland, Finland, and South Africa. Thousands of pages, photos, and voice memos, documents that tied together history, power, and tragedy in a way no institution could control. And when the files went public, when the world saw every lie, every deal, every whisper, the age of reverence was over. What rose in its place was truth, cold, painful, unstoppable, and finally, free.